24/17 dog barking that there is whimpering voices and a loud thud. Okay? Who was driving the car? Who's driving the car between 4:04, when the car goes east on King and does these 3-point turnarounds and goes and turns around at the Queen Road apartment, and 4:20, when it's finally seen hightailing it out of the neighborhood, while these things are happening inside of the Moscow house? Now, I've said a million times, I don't understand why the PCA does not list where he parked his vehicle. That we have all these specifications for these missed turns and horrible attempts to park, but whenever there's this time frame that we're supposed to think that not only the car was there and he was there and he was in the house and he was doing all these things, well, according to this, the car is still driving around, guys. According to this, between 4:04 and 4:20, while the car is doing all of these things out in the neighborhood, all these other things are happening inside the Moscow house. Am I wrong?
His cell phone pings at 2:42 a.m. and then shows it traveling south and then loses connection 2:47 a.m. I said, what was happening? I got 2 males and an outpouring of emotion. One was in control of what we were talking about, and what we were talking about was the cell phone pinging in one place and then another place. So we have one male that's in control of what's going on there, and then we have the other man that's grounded somewhere, and this card came out with the Ace of Cups. So this man was in charge of, or was the reason behind why the cell phone went from one place to another place. And then this man was grounded in place somewhere that he had an emotional connection or emotional attachment to what he was doing. I really don't think it's Bryan that moved his car. I feel like that coming out first was like a confirmation to me of that. Like a big one. Let me just pull. Okay, so we're going to go with this deck. Well, these decks, because it's 2 in 1. So I want energy from this King of Pentacles and energy from the Emperor card. I want to know if the energies are going to be similar to one another or if they're going to be different, where it would be obvious that it's 2 different people we're talking about here. So first for the King of Pentacles. The Exile. Forsaken Soldier. Strategy, failure, trauma. That's for the King of Pentacles. That's for the male figure that was grounded in place somewhere with an emotional attachment to what he was doing, aka allegedly Bryan. The Exile, Forsaken Soldier. And he does have a big sword in his hand. Oh, he has a sword on the ground too. He has one up in the air in his hand and one's like going into the ground. I'm feeling like that's confirmation of what I just said, that it's 2 separate people, but let's see what the other card is as well. So the energy for the Emperor, please let the card be very different than this card, where it's clear that it's 2 different people, or very similar, where it's clear that it could possibly be the same person. So for the Emperor. Charon, the ferryman. The ferryman. The one who's moving the car. Necessity, focus, transition. Well, Yeah, it's like someone moving the vehicle in the shadows. You can't see who the person is, but they're there and they're moving it. I mean, okay, so we have the King of Pentacles, which is the person, the one male figure that's grounded into place, as in like secure in place. This could be when he was waiting. Oh, maybe this is trying to help the timelines line up. So we're talking 2:47 a.m. This is saying that Bryan was already grounded. So either like outside waiting in the woods or actually in the house waiting. Let's pull a card for that. 5 of Wands reverse, conflict avoidance. Oh, we also got 5 of Swords reverse, a fair fight. Conflict avoidance. So I would say he wasn't yet in the house, but he was grounding. He was waiting in the woods. Okay, so what I'm getting, my opinion, allegedly, that at 2:42 to 2:47, I believe that Bryan was already at the house in place, kind of just like, honestly, like that, like sitting there kind of watching. He had an emotional attachment to what he was doing and where he was. Conflict avoidance, so it's like he's not trying to go in too early and cause, like he had to wait for the appropriate sign. I don't know if maybe this was the girls turning out their lights. Queen of Swords. Oh, swords because knife, and then waiting for the queen. Yeah. Okay, so he was waiting for them to turn out their lights. He didn't want to go in too early and cause like an unnecessary hiccup in the plan. Little did he know he would be hiccuping a lot later. And then we have the 5 of Swords, which is about like giving himself a fair chance to be able to do this. Maybe it wasn't the girl's light that he was waiting to go off. Maybe it was Ethan and Xana. No. Xana was still up. Why do I feel like it was Ethan and Xana? 2 of Swords. Oh, he was waiting for everybody's lights to go off. He was waiting for the lights in general to go off. Because then we have this Forsaken Soldier, like the one who actually goes to battle. He does have 2 knives, so I feel like in terms of this card, it's a confirmation that there was somebody else involved. And then we had this other person, which, if he's grounded somewhere, how is he also traveling and moving? He's not. This is a second person. This is the person that had the control over the vehicle moving from point 1 to point 2 and then disconnecting from, and also from the service. And then this is also like going into like a dark tunnel, and then you'd eventually lose phone service, I guess. Like I feel like this looks like a place where you would lose phone service, and then it also has the element of the person driving the boat, the person traveling, while this is what's happening. This person has the control over what we're talking about with the phone, but this person is grounded in place, waiting for their opportunity, giving themselves a fair chance at not having anything unnecessary happen in their plan, waiting for all the lights to go off so that they could fulfill this desire that they had an emotional connection to. Well, he, not they. Well, before I was like, I'm not sure if maybe somebody was helping him and they weren't sure what they were helping him with. This person knew what they were helping with. So now we are at 4 a.m. the only pour of emotions that we've been able to hear about is that one specific thing that Dylan said, that she could hear Xana crying. I feel like this is when Xana was crying. It happened at 4:04 or around that time. Essentially, when the car was making that fourth pass, that's when Xana was being attacked, I believe, around that time. So that would make sense, because if he was back, if he had not been planning for Ethan and Xana, had to go back in the house, encountered them, then that time of attacking Ethan and Xana wouldn't be accounted into the original plan. And that's why that person had to continually drive around the block, because they were like, okay, this is too long, because they had to time it perfectly so that Bryan could be seen on certain cameras and just say that he was just stalking that night. How could I kill people if I drove by in 2 seconds? If you see I'm on this camera here and then this camera here, that doesn't give enough time for me to kill these people. But what went wrong was that something delayed him or caused him extra time that he wasn't accounting for. But that fourth pass, when that car was driving by a fourth time, that was the driver, allegedly, my opinion, that was the driver of the car realizing something might be going wrong because he's 4 passes around the house too late. So I'm going to leave the car here like we planned as a backup and get out of here. No, I'm not getting that Bryan was the driver. Yeah, no, Bryan wasn't the driver. There was a driver, but it wasn't Bryan. So essentially what I'm saying is, when the murders were happening, there's one person committing the murders and there's one person that was involved in some way. I believe it's the driver who moved the car. That's what I'm saying. There's 2 energies that are involved in making this happen that were not together, 2 separate entities here. What can we know about the connection between these 2 entities? 6 of Pentacles reversed, a one-sided debt, Knight of Swords, perfectionist, talking someone into something, or like being a fast talker. Judgment in reverse. I almost feel like Bryan believes that he was getting the other person to help him with his plan, but the other person believes that they were getting Bryan to help with their plan, and no one realized until now that it was actually both ways. Almost like this person's so dumb they don't realize I'm using them for this. But both parties were thinking that, and then now they're realizing that that was the reality, that it wasn't just this person's helping me, they don't realize. It was both ways, if that makes sense. The Knight of Swords here is making me feel like the person who is the accomplice is more seasoned than Bryan. But it's not feeling like they're... So it's like Bryan has more like scholarly knowledge of criminal cases, but the other person has more knowledge of like either the organization or committing crimes. Like they're not... The accomplice's knowledge is superior to Bryan's, but not in terms of schooling. The other person has more knowledge of maybe firsthand experiences with crimes, or just being around a lot of other people that have firsthand experiences in crimes. Like in terms of criminal acts, Bryan is more of a newcomer than the accomplice, if that makes sense. But Bryan has more knowledge, like from an educational schooling standpoint, than the other person. But the other person's also intelligent. Like they went to school, just probably not for criminal studies.